Welcome to TNT Episode 7, Chronicles of Narnia, Book 3.
Well, Taylor, this is getting a little bit confusing. We're on Episode 7.
Episode 7, but Book 3, which...
Yeah.
I guess, let's see.
Yeah. How do we know
we've had two Book 1s, so 1 plus 1 equals 3 because 1 is really 2 and 1 isn't, so... Yeah. Math, people.
Well, the thing is, actually, I have the horse and his boy here, which is what we're going to cover today. And so this is Book 3, according to the chronological versions of the Chronicles of Narnia. I have here one book that has all the books in it, and it's the third one there, The Horse and His Boy. And also in the Narnia official chronology that we keep looking at, it is also after The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then, eventually, here we go, The Horse and His Boy. And this takes place during the years 1014 to 1025. I don't know how they know that.
It's a bit weird because it technically happens inside The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
It is during that period.
It's between the children being crowned and them coming back. It's about the children when they're kings and queens, but not really about them. It's like a little bit of world building to... It's just about what's other people in the world of Narnia while it's happening. So it's hard to figure out where to put it because there's...
I don't know where they even came up with these years. But to add to the confusion, I mean, already...
I'm sure he wrote some kind of a letter to somebody that...
That's probably where they got them. But look at this. I have... This was, you know, an earlier copy, 1970, and it actually says Book 5, because that's part of the published order of the books.
So you said that your copy is from 1970, was it? But
yes.
It was published in 1954.
That's right. So this is
not
old,
quite an original, but pretty close.
Yeah, it's an old copy, not as old as the originals. And my hunch is that this is probably an American edition.
American translation.
An American translation.
Yeah, actually, when a lot of the books were brought to the U.S. for the first time, they did change some things here and there.
Spellings and so on.
Sometimes entire names were changed. I think I don't remember if it was the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe especially, there were some names that were changed, but later editions, they were changed back. So you might even see differences between that and the big anthology you have. But it was, I don't know that for sure, but it was published 5th, as it says on there.
5th published book.
But, like we've already said, it happens inside The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, so there's a little bit of a, I guess, debate, you say, over where it should fall. Some people put it right after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I personally like to put it after the other next book, Prince Caspian, which we haven't
likes to put
yet.
Things where he likes to put them, and come up with his own chronology in the way that but
Prince
you know what?
Caspian is a direct
He
sequel,
heard these stories as a child, and like a lot of people, and he kind of has his own way of seeing how the flow of the story works. But the important thing that we want to do today is tell you a little bit about the book and evaluate it, and hopefully encourage you to read it, regardless of the order that you read them in, that you actually do read these books.
Yeah,
so
it's my favorite, and I really recommend it.
It is a really good story. Well, let's talk now about the characters in this story. What are the main characters?
Well, the book is called A Horse and His Boy. And actually,
Horse and His Boy.
I've got the
Not
audio
the boy and his horse.
I have the audiobook form of Horse and His Boy, and it's introduced by Douglas Gresham, who's the son of the woman that C.S. Lewis married, I believe. And so,
that's confusing.
It is, but it was really
endorsed basically by a C.S. Lewis associated person.
And I believe it was actually dedicated to him. And so he got to read the manuscript before it was published, and I believe he said that there were some other titles that Lewis tried to go for before The Horse and His Boy. I think To Narnia in the North, I think, was one of them, which is the catchphrase of one of the characters.
Oh, yeah.
Which the publisher didn't really like that one very much, and I think Onward to Narnia or something like that was another. It was a pretty generic one. I don't even remember it, but it was sacked too, and eventually A Horse and His Boy was chosen, which is a pretty interesting
It is an interesting title, but it actually isn't really complete because the main characters are more than just a horse and his boy. So, who are the actual main characters in this story?
Well, the first two, like it says in the title, The Horse and His Boy. There's
the horse, which is called Bree, but that's actually short for yeah. I have it written here. It's Bree Hinny Brinny Hooty Ha. That's his full name for anyone who wants to know.
A rough American translation.
Yeah, you have to say it with an English accent
and
kind of put a horse twinge on it. But that's the horse.
The boy, whose name is Shasta, and
which happens to be the name of a
happens to be the name
company.
Of a
what's it?
Soda.
Low cost soda. But that has nothing to do with this story. It's just a coincidence. I think.
Hopefully a coincidence. I'm not really sure why somebody would name a brand of soda after
C.S. Lewis character. So we've got the horse and his boy, and then
the horse.
The parallel to this, right, is the girl horse.
They don't really make it in the title.
No.
But it's it's a.
What's the girl horse's name?
The girl horse's name is Hwin. It's Hwin.
I wonder if that's short for Whinny Hooty Hooty Ha Ha Ha.
Probably. And then there's the girl whose name is Erebus, and her name is a little bit different than a lot of the other Narnia names because she's not from Narnia.
Right. She's from
the land of Calormen.
At least we're trying our best with pronunciations.
Calormen's a little difficult because their culture is kind of based off of a mixture of Arabic and Indian, so it's kind of hard to figure out how it should be pronounced. So I'm just going to go with Calormen.
Yeah.
And the reason that she's one of the characters is because the two horses and the two children are from Calormen. Well, the horses weren't. They were from Narnia, and they were talking horses. And in the beginning of the story, you find out, even though this country, Calormen, is in the same world as Narnia, they don't have talking animals like Narnia does. So the boy Shasta is a bit surprised when a horse begins to talk to him and convinces him to help him escape back to Narnia.
Yes.
And along their way, they meet the horse and her girl.
Ah, okay. So let's go back and talk about how the story actually begins.
Yeah, I kind of jumped into that a little bit.
That's okay. He's just so excited. He's ready to jump into the plot. It begins in this place called Calormen, which is, it's
a land near Narnia.
It's kind of near Narnia, but it takes a while to travel there.
As the characters find out.
Yes, they do eventually have to travel a ways to get there. The kids and the Narnian horses, because these horses, being from Narnia, are able to talk.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. No one can talk to a horse, of course, unless the horse is from Narnia. So they are talking to these horses, and they are trying to escape from Calormen because they're facing really bad stuff. You know, Shasta's a slave, and he's treated very badly. All of them are really
slaves except for the girl.
Yeah, the girl's high up, but she's basically going to be forced into a marriage.
So she thinks she's escaping slavery too, pretty much.
Yeah. And I forget the guy's name that she's supposed to be married to, but he's very mean and controlling and pretty old. So she wants to run away from that, and so they're trying to escape from Calormen, and they have to travel through the desert. And
very hot desert.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel good when you don't have shoes on.
No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, Shasta is in that situation. They finally get to a city where they overhear some
Calormen city. It's like the capital royal city kind of place.
And they overhear these plans that are being made
concocted to take over Narnia.
Yes. So
because the prince is jealous and acting like a little crybaby, pretty much.
Yeah. The prince named Rabadash. He wants to marry Queen Susan, and so he's plotting an attack against Narnia
because she ran away because she didn't want to marry him. And
so the kids then have to take off with the horses to try to make it to warn Narnia about this attack. And when they finally get there, they end up meeting Aslan, and they end up fending off the attackers, and everything ends up pretty well. We won't give away the whole ending, but that's the gist of the plot. That's the overall gist of the story. So what we like to do is give some teaching themes from each of these books, so we're going to talk about that now. What's something that we could learn from this book?
Well, without giving too much away, because this is a pretty unique Narnia book in that there's a lot of twists and turns around the way. All the other Narnia books are pretty straightforward.
A lot of people haven't read this one, so that's another reason we didn't want to give away too much.
Yeah, but with this one it would really take away a lot of the fun.
Right.
Like, a lot of the major themes are related to pretty big plot points, but without giving too much away, Aslan does everything for a purpose that is pretty far out there. The characters pretty much can't even comprehend it until it's explained to them.
Right. Later in the story, everything is explained.
Which is a parallel that we see in the Bible. The Lord does things for a purpose that has a far wider scope than anything that we could think of. So,
and at the time, it seems like something hard, and it seems like, well, why would God allow this to happen? But he actually, in the long run, had a very good purpose for allowing that in our life.
Which is what we see with Aslan in this story.
Definitely. Another teaching theme is that Aslan, when he talks to people about what's happened in their life, he tells them why he did it. But when they ask about someone else,
that's not their business.
Yeah, he basically says, I only tell each person his or her own story.
Which kind of fits into the overarching view kind of theme. Yeah. Like, you don't need to know all the details. That's
true. What's
all
important
you need to know is how you fit into
right.
it.
Yeah, where
you don't
you
need to know the whole story.
Yeah, God can take care of the overarching story of everybody else. But that's interesting. There's a story in the Bible where that kind of takes place, where Peter is told how his life is going to end by Jesus. He's told his future a little bit, and he asks, well, what about this other disciple, John? And Jesus says, that's not really for you to know. So I'm wondering if C.S. Lewis was maybe pulling from that a little bit in this story.
That's possible.
He only tells each person their own story.
Which is something that you see in other books, especially in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. That's a pretty major point in that book, too.
Yep.
I don't remember, was Dawn Treader published before Horse and His Boy? I don't think it...
well, I'd have to go back and look. This is book 5, so it's possible.
Either Horse and His Boy or Dawn Treader first started to work on that theme, and in one or the other, he kind of carried it out.
Well, the Bible actually gives a proverb that says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. And that's another theme that comes out in this book, because there's a character who's a prince going after... Prince Rabbitash. Yeah, he wants to force someone to marry him. And he's a very, very selfish person, and he's very consumed with his own sense of self-importance, and he thinks that he deserves everything. Yeah, he's a spoiled brat, to put it frankly. Yeah. And by the end of the story, he faces punishment. He had the opportunity, really, to be given mercy. He's given a very drawn-out opportunity to repent, and he just shows his own pride throughout the entirety of it. Yep, and it ends up being self-destructive. So, it's a good lesson. Contrasting with that, though, there's another character, Bree the horse, who's pretty prideful throughout most of the story, because he's a talking horse, and he's so much smarter than all the other horses. He feels like he's better than all the other horses. Yeah, he doesn't... without giving away too much, Aslan don't give away too much. Chastises him about that, and he says, "You've come to think of yourself as important because you've been around all these horses that are dumb and stupid, but realize you're not going to be anybody special in Narnia." And Bree does humble himself, and he repents of his pride, and it turns out well for him. Yeah. So some really good lessons on pride and humility in this book. Alright, finally we're going to do our takeaways from this book. These are just some humorous things that we've come up with that we like to say are good takeaways. Don't take this seriously. Just for the 2% of you out there who would take this seriously. Okay, so takeaway number 1, as we kind of alluded to earlier, no one can talk to a horse, of course. Unless they're from Narnia. Unless the horse. It's a very important life lesson that you'll need to learn. Yeah. Well, we're going to actually show you a little clip, hopefully. Yeah, I attempted to talk to a horse, but... Apparently these were not Narnian horses. I'm here at the Word of Life Snow Camp to interview these fine horses and this dog. So,
Any of you like to share a few words of your experiences here at camp? I don't think they would like to share words. That was a pretty humiliating experience for me. I was trying to salvage it, but they just wouldn't respond.
You got nothing from them.
Now, we did last week share an interview with a student from the same camp, and so you can go look at that and see it.
He did talk. He was a talking human.
It was a much better interview, so go back and see that if you haven't already.
Another important takeaway, as we alluded to earlier, was about walking in the desert. It's really good if you're going to go in the desert long distances to bring shoes with you. Yeah,
the sand can get very hot, and
it really can.
In Shasta's
not that
case,
we know a lot about that here where we live.
Yeah,
but apparently
I'm not really sure what this concept of heat is. I'm just assuming it's the absence of cold.
Well, it actually felt pretty hot to us today because it got up into the 30s. I mean, that's why we're wearing a lot lighter clothing today. But it's actually better just to avoid the desert altogether.
Which we don't have a problem with. I mean,
we don't really have a desert.
The closest I've ever come to a desert is, well, I did used to live in North Dakota, which was kind of close in some areas, but it's kind of been repressed.
You're nowhere near that now.
Except the frozen wasteland desert, I guess, which it could be argued, but it's always a good idea to stay away from deserts if you can.
And the final takeaway has to do with marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If there's someone that you continually argue with,
chances are that it would make things a lot more convenient if you just got married. Then you can continue to argue for as long as you want and nobody will interrupt you.
Yeah, apparently C.S. Lewis, I don't know exactly what he was getting at when he said that, but he had these two characters that argue all the time, and he said, well, it was convenient for them just to go ahead and get married. So I guess there's a lesson in that. If you like arguing with someone, you might as well go ahead and get married. Well, thank you very much for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed our evaluation of another C.S. Lewis book. And
one of the best, in my opinion.
That's right. And I totally agree with that. And next time we will cover book number who knows what.
Probably book 11 and a half.
Yeah, whatever book comes next in this series, we'll cover that next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe, spread the word, and see you next time.